What are you pointing at?
You see the bottom string, the bottom.
Ah, well, we might have to live with that. There we go.
Oh,
We're live. Mind your banners. Great radio, 15 minutes in. He's Mike Nisley. I'm Zach Osterman talking to you about number 3, Indiana 38, Michigan State 13. Mike, I think the foremost question on everyone's mind is, can they put the rearview mirror back on now? Because it seems, quite frankly, like a safety issue.
or do you rip it off every time, every week? You put it back on to just rip it off again because you can't think about the last.
So they literally have no idea what's going on behind the car.
Never.
That's not good.
Never.
You need your rearview mirror to change lanes.
Some of us.
Fernando Mendoza didn't need a rearview mirror tonight. 24-28, 332 yards and 4 touchdowns. You can call this Indiana's worst defensive performance of the season, and I think it was. This is the most yards passing they've allowed. This is the most yards they've allowed, and yet 4 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 1 defensive touchdown allowed. But I do think today is defined by, we talked so much about. It sounds like Michigan State's leaving the stadium as we speak. That's what those sirens are, I think. As much as the Oregon game, it felt like was defined by the defense setting the terms of that game and the offense taking its opportunities when they came. It felt like, especially because Michigan State started this game well, this game was more defined by the fact that the offense had an answer every time. And we knew Michigan State was not a very good team, particularly defensively. But, the defense is not great those first couple drives. Michigan State's getting a lot of what it wants, both in terms of what it's running and the time that it's bleeding off the clock to keep Indiana's offense off the field. But every time Indiana's offense has an answer, I think the touchdown right before halftime to make it a 2-score game is really important. And then Kurt Cignetti himself said he thought that touchdown to make it 28-10 was really, really important. Today felt like a game that Indiana's offense could kind of wear proudly.
Well, there's a couple things in there we could talk about. I think the middle 8 has been key almost each of the last 3 wins. They've won that solidly. Gotten points on kind of the front end and the back end.
Middle 8, for anyone who doesn't know,
that's more the first half.
4 minutes first half, first word, yeah.
And their strategy always is to defer in the second half. Here again, they got to stop. Got points coming out of halftime, and it's just like that adds up. And Kurt Cignetti's kind of talked about that being the key stretch. I think when you kind of look at this game, Michigan State tried to steal a play from Iowa's playbook in terms of shortening the game. You mentioned that they took 15 minutes off the clock in those first drives. Problem was, little margin for error because they don't have as talented of a defense. So it was tough because Trials did not have a bad day at the office. Like that, they put up decent numbers, but once they crossed the midfield after those first 2 drives, didn't really get anything until obviously the end of the game when the backup was in on kind of the garbage time. So there's that. I think like you said, and Cignetti said the defense will put on the film and see a lot of stuff that they're not happy with, a lot of stuff they want to clean up. I thought Michigan State's game plan of sort of using Indiana's aggressiveness and pressure against them. That was kind of the first time we had seen that, where it's just like these delayed screens that open up because of the pressure.
And they widen the field, too. A lot of teams have tried to go over the soft middle against this zone. Michigan State widened the field. Now, maybe that's Charles' arm strength, right? And Nick Marsh being good in single coverage. But, yeah, they did things that Indiana really hadn't seen.
And had success with it. But just the problem is that they had to be near perfect. And the defense was nowhere near that. They didn't have anybody in the secondary that could stop Omar Cooper or Elijah Stratt or even EJ Williams, who had a nice day. And then, everybody had, there was a couple other guys with big gains. It just felt like, look, you could have an off day, but great teams find a win to just win like this. And this was a great team winning. It seems like this is what Ohio State does, right? Even when they have an off day, they win by 30 against a worse team.
It's like if you're aiming for 12-0, which at this point it's fair to say Indiana is, you're not going to win all of them by 45. Like there are going to be some days when you got to squeeze out a tough win on the road against an Iowa team that is probably lesser than you, but it's still a tough place to play. They're still well coached. A game like this, you're worried about the letdown, which Kurt Cignetti has said, and this was the only thing that surprised me when he talked about this all week about the whole trap game thing. He said, because remember last year, he said sometimes you can create a trap game by talking too much about it, by overemphasizing it.
He said it in the context of he had these undefined worries about his team, and sometimes you can create problems by focusing too much on the negative.
Yeah.
It wasn't specifically about a trap game.
No, it was about because I was the one who asked him. This was last year. I asked him the question about a trap game. I forget which game it was.
About that.
I'm not.
We can go back. We'll check we'll have our producers check the tape.
We'll check the weather forecast. Check the weather. We'll check the weather reports. But the other part of this was like it was also kind of a weird game, right? Like it began under the threat of weather. We wound up with a weather delay at halftime. There was rain at one point in the weather. They came back out to a wet field. They were playing on a dry field. They came back out to a wet field. It started raining in the fourth quarter. Like you're allowed to just win these games in second gear, and Indiana did that. And listen, again, I think Kurt Signane's right. There's stuff they're going to want to clean up. But on the other hand, I mean, Fernando Mendoza was never even really that close to a sack. I thought this was his best game in terms of not just obviously the numbers look really good, but in terms of like he looked comfortable. He slid away from pressure rather than panicking. He wasn't afraid to tuck it and run when he needed to, but maybe unlike a couple times earlier in the year, he kind of protected himself when he went to slide or got down. He had that one really awkward, like first down where he basically just turned his back and just fell over the line to gain. He just looked like that was kind of the most in command. Like and to be fair to him, I thought he deserved some credit for what he did at Oregon, what he did at Iowa, because he made the winning plays when they were there to be made, especially at Oregon. But this was the first time. Not the first time. This is the best example to me of him just feeling really like totally comfortable and in command. And I know where the protection's going to go. I know where the gaps are going to be. I know when to hold it and go to my third or my fourth read and when to tuck and scramble. And I mean, again, the numbers are hard to argue with. Omar Cooper said he thinks he's the best quarterback in the country. Cooper, I don't know if you could hear this at the back of the scrum. Cooper's words were, he will not want me to say this. He won't like hearing me say this, but I think he's the best quarterback in the country. And, listen, I mean, today, I think we talked about this during the week. Days like this are how you shore up a Heisman candidacy. Right. You win, the moments from an Oregon or an Iowa are important, but this is where you get your numbers.
Yeah.
And I mean, 24, 28, 332, and 4 touchdowns.
You got to be fair to the offensive line. That was the best they've been in pass protection all season.
It
never felt like, you mentioned kind of a couple times he had to roll out or move the pocket a little bit.
But that didn't even feel stressful.
It never felt like he was really under duress at all in the game. And in the last two games, that's been sort of a common theme where you've kind of seen him facing some of that pressure. I think you also got to give credit to all the skill guys. I mean, they had 148 yards after the catch. Michigan State just didn't have the bodies in the secondary to really match up against with this team, really at any spot. I'm not trying to take away credit for Fernando Mendoza.
No, but
it's just Elijah Serrata went back. I think he's had 70 yards and at least one touchdown in all 4 conference games. This was Omar Cooper's first 100-yard performance against a Big Ten opponent, which feels like a significant milestone for him because he's trying to do these things against as the competition gets better. He's shown now that he's right, because that wasn't the case last year. I felt like he disappeared at moments.
Yeah.
And this year, I think he's sort of set himself apart.
That's what Signetti talks about a lot in the offseason was this is how good I think Omar Cooper can be, but we need to see it. We need to see it more consistent.
And then what Signetti talked about, from an offensive play caller's perspective, when you have 2 guys and more than that, as he said, they have more than 2, but at least 2 of that caliber of a receiver or a skill player, you can't game plan against that. That's like it's an impossible task to sort of try to take out 2 guys at once and to try to hold that game plan together. And you saw it, like they couldn't take away either of them, and then everybody else got loose too. I mean, you saw Nowakowski got loose on the sidelines. Hemby had a big gain. So you just kind of see this team coming together and all the offensive weapons they have. Maybe not as deep as they were last year, but just playing at a higher level. I feel like in skill positions.
No, I think that's the best way to put it. Is like maybe they had like 5 wide receivers last year instead of 3.
Yeah.
But the 3 this year, I mean, like let me ask it to you this way: like 2 questions for you. Number 1, is Elijah Surratt better than Jeremiah Smith? Maybe not skills wise. I think Smith's the best receiver in the Big Ten. Do you think there's an argument, and I don't know what Smith's done today, but they were pretty much even statistically coming into this, that Surratt's had the better season? Maybe that's the better way to ask it.
Yeah, it's hard. I haven't seen much of him play this season, so I just look at the numbers, and I know both of them are ranked in the top 10 in receptions in the Big Ten, receptions, yards, and touchdowns, and they were like 1 and 2 at one point receiving touchdowns. Surratt to me is just he's not flashy as some of the other guys, like where he's kind of, but it's just a steady sort of consistency, and he's become like sort of the ultimate possession receiver for Fernando Mendoza. And like you've seen his targets increase, and it doesn't matter. He's facing a lot of double teams. He's facing a lot of physicality. Oregon, that was as physical I think as we've seen a team play him. He just sort of shrugged it off, and he just does what he does. I just think it's just been really impressive.
His combination of toughness and technique is as good as any receiver. And that's actually one of the positions that quietly Indiana's had, a fair few NFL caliber players in the time I've been on the beat. His combination of toughness and technique, like the precision in his routes, his hands are always in the right place.
Because I asked both of them, I asked both Cooper and Williams, like, what skill does the other one have that they're jealous of? And he says, I don't have Omar Cooper's explosiveness. And I think that's why those type of receivers don't get the kind of the glory and sort of the publicity as some of the other ones do, because those are the exciting. You see Omar Cooper pull on the top off the defense.
Yeah.
Surratt doesn't do that. I mean, he'll do that with his technique occasionally because he can beat a guy like that, but it's not consistent. But he should be up for all the receiver of the year awards, not just in the Big Ten. Like what he's done, all his numbers are worthy. But I just think when you watch his game, there's no question in my mind that he's one of the top receivers in the country.
And the second question is this the best starting wide receiver group in the conference? And that again, I think the question is Ohio State. Yeah. It's Jeremiah Smith and Cardinal Tate versus these three.
Well, I just said they have the best receiving duo. Like I don't think you can top. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, Cardinal Tate's pretty good. I think he had 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, but I just think the way Cooper and Stroud have played, especially in the Big Ten portion of the schedule, the last 4 weeks, counting for, like I said, I ran the numbers last week, almost 60% of this team's targets.
Well, and then
putting up the numbers,
and then you throw up throw in EJ Williams, who is like, is it? No, I mean, seriously, I mean that was what Indiana didn't have last year.
No,
was a third boundary threat.
But EJ Williams was today, but I don't think you can even box one player in there. I think they have a variety of guys that can play that role on any given day, where they can have a third player that gets consistent.
But it's consistently been Williams. I think he's got like 23 catches now this season.
He had 0 catches last week and 1 the week before that. So I mean, he's come and go. He had a good strong start today. He was good, but I think Nowakowski is a guy that has you consistently big plays throughout the season,
which is something we did not think they were going to get from him at the tight end.
Had to use Holden Stays all that much, but I just think you have consistency down the line. It doesn't need to be. My point is, it doesn't need to be EJ Williams on a game to game basis, because I think you can count on 3 or 4 other guys to make plays for them in the passing game beyond Cooper and Williams.
Somebody asked, there is no update at this point on Kellen Wyatt. I'm not sure Signetti even got a question about it, but in fairness,
he doesn't offer updates after games anyway.
Yeah, because they're probably not going to know. Like if it's really bad, they're going to need to send him for scans. And
I will say, he came in last. I mean, if this was a game, I'm not sure he wouldn't have come back in, because that's what he did last week. Looked like he had a worse injury last week. He came back in and he was mad that he had to sit out as long as he did. He walked off onto the field on his own power too, which is always encouraging to see.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair too. I mean, listen, it wasn't perfect. Like, I was surprised Indiana wasn't more explosive in the run game. 27 to 33, I think is a little bit of a concern. That, like, I mean, I have always believed in the tools that Aiden Childs has.
You love Aiden Childs.
I do. I think we should all become Aiden Childs fans. And you certainly saw like what people talk about when they talk about those tools today. But if you're Indiana, it did not feel like they had 4 sacks, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, it did, they finished with 4 sacks.
They didn't get a ton of pressure when it mattered.
And it didn't feel like they were getting him out of his rhythm, getting him off his timing, which they absolutely did with Luke Altmaier. They absolutely did with Dante Moore. Like, they got those 2 quarterbacks playing within themselves because they couldn't find their rhythm and they couldn't get comfortable. He found his rhythm early, and listen, we can argue, was Kellen Wyatt getting held on that long conversion that eventually turns into the only touchdown Michigan State scores? Maybe. And the other part of this, frankly, is like, this is what it's like when your team's trying to go 12-0. Like, you are going to nitpick along the margins because we know they're better than
the better way to say it is
9 wins or 10 wins.
Like they struggled to kind of get this game going, that they were down 10-7, but then they scored 31 unanswered points, and it never felt like there was a moment in the second half where this game was in the balance.
No, not at all.
And so, it's a little closer of a score, and they didn't cover. Great teams cover. They didn't cover thanks to a field goal with how many seconds left?
Like 20.
20 seconds left. Yeah. Amazing. But this game wasn't in the balance right like basically at the end of the first half. Defense, like you said, there's things that they didn't get a ton of pressure. And today was actually the first game. I think you talked about it. Mikel Kamara did not look great. I felt like it looked uncomfortable maybe at times.
No, I
Trying
mean,
to get off the line.
yeah, like he looked. I mean, he looked hampered by
And
something.
then, and they took
frankly.
him off the field in a couple key situations, and Stephen Daly had 2 sacks, and he played a little bit more. I felt. I mean, we'll have to look at the snap numbers or counts.
He definitely came back, but like
Came
he
back.
did not look 100%.
And so, yeah, you'll find those things, but man, like if that's the worst they can do, that's the worst they do here on out. Like, you're going to be happy because you're just beating teams handily, even though you maybe not have. It's not doesn't all look perfect over 60 minutes.
Somebody, I think it's Brandon here, asked, is Haynes always going to drop 4 or 5 in the secondary? The middle of the field is wide open on tape all year. I'm not sure that's not somewhat by design. Like, if you funnel all the action to the middle, that means there are always players around the ball. And yeah, you will give up some slants, some crossing routes. But like, think about what was hurting Indiana today. It was not over the middle. Michigan State did not want to throw the ball over the middle. It was screens. It was throwing into the pressure. And it was those which we see Indiana have success with this too. Those like hard 8-yard out routes where they just they get like against soft-ish zone coverage. They get 7 or 8 yards deep, and then they just cut and take a hard out. I do think Indiana is comfortable leaving the middle of the field a little bit soft, and I think the thought process is anything that goes like 5 to 12 yards in the middle of the field, it's not going to turn into a touchdown.
Yeah.
And we back ourselves to create a negative play.
If we stop the run game and
yes, exactly. If we're stopping the run and we're creating negative plays, then eventually that will get us to a place where we force a field goal that should have been a touchdown, or we get a punt or whatever, that like you can live with getting nickeled and dimed in the middle sometimes, because you're always going to have tacklers there, and you back yourself to eventually put the other team behind the chains and make them push the ball truly down the field.
And I'd also point out, I don't think it was clean. Like I think the touchdown came on a miscommunication or missed assignment. Somebody had the middle and didn't get the middle.
Yeah, you probably.
And so like there was a couple of times where those things, and that actually I think has been the weakness of this team. The communication in the secondary, and to some extent with the linebackers has failed at times this year. It hasn't hurt them in a game. It hasn't decided a final score, but it has come up time and time again, and that's something that I think Kurt Cignetti's talked repeatedly about, that they've got to get cleaned up, and it'll continue to be since it's continuing to be an issue. They still need to fix it and find a way, because there's no new personnel that's coming in the secondary. Like, this is the group they have. We just got to get cleaner and sort of eliminate those mistakes. But I think you've seen. So I think it's a combination of things. That's by strategy, but also some of the times they have been hurt by it. It's not because by design. It's because a communication error happens.
The big picture then, just to kind of close, Miami loses. I mean, it seems likely to me Indiana will rise to number 2 in the country.
Yeah, sure.
I think the only real possibility was Ole Miss jumping them, and Ole Miss wound up losing that game.
Oh, Georgia did win?
Yeah, Georgia came back and won. I'm almost certain. Tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think the 43 to 35, I think. It was one where like Ole Miss scored on a bunch of straight possessions and then just like stopped scoring. So they're going to be number 2. Ohio State's probably not giving up number 1. At least until the Michigan game. I mean, it would be a heck of a thing if it was 1 versus 2 in Indianapolis. And here's the thing I will say: Miami losing, Texas Tech losing. Indiana's going to have to get to into the regular season 12-0, I think, or obviously win the Big Ten championship. But if with Miami's loss and Texas Tech's loss.
You're talking about the guy with one loss.
Yes, and maybe even to a certain extent Ole Miss's loss. I think this opens the road to 12-1 Indiana losing the Big Ten championship game and still getting one of the 4 byes. Because remember, they changed the rule after last year. The byes don't automatically go to conference champions anymore. The byes go where they're ranked. We're not doing any of that stuff like their ranking is this and their seeding is over here. This year, it's just the top 12 straight down. So I think today opens the door to a 12-0 Indiana losing the Big Ten title game and still getting one of those 4 byes.
Yeah, I don't get the sense that if these teams are both undefeated, that they'll be penalized in any way, shape, or form based on their body of work as of right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's going to be hard too to drop one of them for losing to the other if they're number 1 and 2 in the country.
We'll wait and see on that, because like even if they were to go to 12-0, if they stumble and like have like three bad wins in there. If they almost lose to Purdue, maybe you can find something in the resume that you can pick apart. But if all the games look at worst like this, there's going to be it's going to be hard to find a flaw in what Indiana has done, especially with the highs of their wins, the strength of schedule they're going to have with that 3 game stretch. Because Illinois had the bottom hasn't fallen off for Illinois. Iowa still looks like a very good team. In Oregon, I think they're doing what they need to do against Rutgers.
I think it's 21-3 last I checked. So
Indiana winning again.
My guess is Oregon's going to win the game.
So, you see those things, and it's really hard to find faults in the resume. In the resume, it'll be interesting this week to see UCLA. I think is playing Maryland right now. I don't know what's happening in that game, but obviously they have UCLA next week, then Maryland after that. I think 2 of the harder games left on their schedule, to be honest. Both those opponents. With Penn State, we'll see if they can rebound, but it'll be interesting to see if they can finish this out because. Signetti referenced today, like they've got a lot ahead of them. And I think they know what the stakes are each week now with what they've kind of put on, what they've done here in the last 7 weeks.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One plug here at the end. A lot of you have probably already heard this. I think it's 42-3 Oregon.
Okay.
So they're doing all right.
Just okay.
They put the rearview mirror back on
Yes.
after Indiana. A lot of you probably have already heard this, but Monday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. at home field at Tracks down on Kirkwood. It's in that direction, broadly speaking. We will be having a live in-person Mind Your Banners. We're really excited about this. We have some giveaways. More than that, we just love the opportunity to meet a few of you fine folks. So 4 to 5 p.m. Monday, October 20th at home field at Tracks on Kirkwood. The first ever in-person live Mind Your Banners. But for now, Indiana wins 38-13. You had this stat, the first time they have retained the spittoon since 1969.
Yeah, since 1960, they had this first consecutive, I think, win streak in the series for them since 1967 to 69.
Yeah.
And it's overall, too,
Yeah.
just an amazing stat.
Well, yeah. So Hoosiers are 7-0, 4-0 in Big Ten play. UCLA here next Saturday. We'll know what time, if you're listening to this, we're recording Saturday night. We'll know what time sometime Sunday. But for now, for the Indianapolis Star, for the Bloomington Herald Times, he's Mike Nislik. I'm Zach Osterman. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon.